Hello! So last week I was privileged enough to go to Grenoble in France. Here is what happened.
So I woke up on Sunday at 2:30am with funky hair for the 4am bus ride to France. Our flight to Geneva left at 7am when we arrived there 2 hours later. We crossed into the French side and hired a car while wishing we had Gold Club membership, and then it was out into France. We saw mountains and bowling and more mountains. We were booked onto the facility on Monday morning, so we stopped off in Chamonix on the way down. Chamonix is a fantastic place with nice houses and cheese in a pot and mini Jesus. But the best thing about Chamonix is the cable car up to Aiguille de Midi, or the Needle of the South. The half-hour cable car ride gave us astounding views of the surrounding scenery as well as less lazy people while leaving us very short of breath. A short drive later and we arrived at the less than imposing entrance at the ESRF and walked into the less than imposing facility, which to me looked like a giant filled aircraft hangar. Here we dropped off our bags and went to bed. I was woken up on day 2 by these lovely fellows, and after a quick breakfast it was down to the lab. The lab consisted of the prep room where we prepared our samples, the x-ray room where we put our samples, and the computer room where we programmed the machine. The research we did involved firing a very powerful x-ray at our sample, much more powerful than you'd see in a hospital. Because it was so powerful we had to be shielded from the x-ray by shielding material, leaving the room whenever we turned the x-ray on. We did this for 21 hours, going into the lab, loading our samples, and then sitting and watching the computer. We did have breaks for lunch and dinner, and also a couple to stretch our legs. About halfway through I took to the 12-minute trail around the circular facility. The atmosphere in the facility was quite multinational. As I walked I heard strains of French, German and dialects of English showing people here from as far afield as Australia. As it got later, it got even more surreal. The facility was a place of few windows and constant lighting, and so time almost stood still. I passed various other labs on the way around with names I didn't understand using techniques I didn't know about. I also saw this sign: "Scientists are hilarious." We only got part of our answer in the lab. More computing time was needed to get a fuller one, so we ended up with lots of these weird dotty pictures. It was quite hard to see if our experiments had completely worked. However, we worked into the evening and then late into the night with various breaks to keep us awake. I found after 12 hours my brain started to slow down a bit, but fortunately the work was fairly repetitive. At 3am I said goodbye to my last sample and carried out my last experiment. Then I looked over what I'd done while my colleague carried out his last set of experiments. I found it useful to have someone else there in the early hours of the morning, not necessarily for those deep and meaningful discussions that happen at 4 in the morning, but just to have someone working at the same time as you. Here is me after the 21st hour. 21st hour, it's about 10 more minutes maybe? Then we're done. Good. Now for showering and eating and then going to the airport. Hooray. After the second breakfast of my day, it was straight onto the again mountainous road to the airport. I spent it half sleeping and half thinking about my day just past. It was strange to me that in places like this, so many nations came together for a day or two at a time without much interaction. It felt like an elaborate photocopying room, with people going in and out all the time, not really staying for too long. When we finally got to the airport, we checked in and waited for our flight, idly watching the passers-by, which included this rather interesting photographer taking a spinny photo. Then it was sleep all the way home.